It's shaping up to be quite a good year for Apple, as the iPhone 14 series is positioning itself to be another paradigm shift for the iPhone lineup. No longer will we have an iPhone mini. Instead, Apple introduced a larger version of its regular iPhone, dubbed the iPhone 14 Plus. Yet, the crown jewels are the two different sized flavors of essentially the same phone, the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Pro. And this year, the two premium models have something more going for themselves in comparison with their more affordable contemporaries in the form of some new exclusive features and functionalities that aren't found on the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus. This year also marks Apple's first hardware differentiation between the more premium and affordable iPhones. Only the Apple iPhone 14 Pro Max and iPhone 14 Pro will be powered by the new A16 Bionic chipset, while the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus will be relying on last year's A15 Bionic instead. There's also a majorly redesigned notch and toe, now in an I shape, as well as an always-on display functionality and a new main 48MP camera system that holds the promise for much better phone photography. Both the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Pro are getting released on September 16th, but how do these two compare? Apple iPhone 14 Pro Max versus iPhone 14 Pro in a nutshell. 6.7-inch 120Hz OLED, iPhone 14 Pro Max versus 6.1-inch 120Hz OLED, iPhone 14 Pro. More durable battery, iPhone 14 Pro Max. More compact design, iPhone 14 Pro. In the design and display quality, the only major difference between the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max is the size of the two phones. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is pushing the limits of manageable due to its large size, while the iPhone 14 Pro is hitting that sweet spot for most people. Now if we look past the size differences, we'd see that the two phones are essentially similar in terms of design. The big difference here is that Apple's super premium phones will introduce a new, I-shaped punch hole that substitutes the now standard iPhone notch. And the dynamic island punch hole is really something else, especially compared with the traditional notch that is still be used on the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus. Another interesting new feature on both the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max is the always-on display, which makes good use of the minimum 1 Hz refresh rate. Face ID remains the main biometric of choice on the iPhone 14 family. Both the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max will come with the functionality on deck despite the differences in the notch design. Now let's talk about performance and software. The top-of-the-line iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max come with the A16 Bionic chipset. Manufactured on a 4nm node, it relies on the tried and tested 6-core layout consisting of 2 performance and 4 efficiency cores. Compared to the Apple A15 Bionic from last year, Apple doesn't really give specific performance figures but promises that its new chip is 40% faster than the competition. In terms of memory, we expect 6GB of LPDDR5 RAM to have made the cut on both devices, but we will have to circle back on that later as Apple doesn't usually disclose RAM capacity in the official specs pages. In terms of native storage, the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max start at 128GB and also come in 256GB, 512GB, and even a full 1TB of storage. When it comes to software updates, iPhones are famous for their 5 to 6 year software update policy. Having this in mind means that both the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max will certainly be up to date until 2027 or 2028, which is the best the mobile industry currently has to offer. Both phones will have 5G support, and there are even rumors that we might see satellite calling on the iPhone 14 series, and if any two phones will get that, it's the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max that are at the forefront.